Lately, when I've been taking the Xterra out and getting it nice and hot, I can smell this burning smell. Of course, I was very concerned. It smelled really hot, so I got my OBD2 reader out and I made sure it wasn't overheating. That was number one. Next, I started looking for leaks. And after looking around for quite some time, I found an oil leak on the valve cover, and it was dripping onto the exhaust heat shield. And so the heat shield, obviously getting very hot, was creating that really hot, oily smell. So that's what we need to do today. We need to take off the valve cover and get a new gasket on it. Let's jump right in. Now my leak is actually on the passenger side. Today I'm going to do both sides. However, to get to the passenger side valve cover, you need to take off the entire air induction system. And we do that by starting at the air filter cover. So just take this sensor off. This looks like mass airflow. And then you can take this clip out. Alright, and just set that aside. Then you want to loosen really either of one of these. So I'm just going to loosen this one here. Make sure we have some room there. There we go. And then just pop off the filter cover and pull it away. There we go. And set that aside. Since you are taking this off, just take the opportunity to flip your filter over and take a quick look at it. If it needs to be replaced, now's a good time. Next, we need to remove the two screws on the top of this plastic cover. Once those are out, it has two little clips. I think one's here and one's over here that you need to pull off. Once those two are off, just pull it off and then set it aside. Next, you just have two more bolts behind this emblem here. They're either going to be a 10mm head or Phillips head. That's fine. Once those two are off, you need to remove this hose. There we go. And then also loosen one of the clamps on the throttle body. Once that's loose, pull your screws out here. And then that will come right off the throttle body, and then you can set that aside. Next, we're going to remove the throttle body. And the bolts actually need to be removed in a particular order, this order. And then you need to remove these two lines. These actually have coolant in them. As long as you keep them upright, only a little tiny bit of coolant will come out. So just kind of put like a cloth or something down below to catch any coolant that comes out of it, so you don't get it on your belts. And then you have this electrical connector here that you just can push with your fingers and pull out. So pull all that out, and then we can move on to the actual intake here. Once you're down to the last bolt, just be really careful. Make sure you're holding it up so you don't drop it, and then just go carefully set it aside. Next, we're going to attack this here, the intake. Now, what we want to do is there's a few air hoses. There's one back here. I'll show you a photo of that. And this one here, we want to remove that. Then we're going to lift up this vacuum container and just kind of set that on top here. And then we have to start pulling the electrical off. There's electrical connectors, looms, that are connected to brackets. That just needs to be pushed back so we can actually remove this once we take out the bolts. There's also an electrical connector back here. It's just a little gray connector. You actually have to push the whole connector off. So just slide it off of that metal bracket, so because this whole bracket's going to come with you when you pull this off. This vacuum container is a 12mm. I'm just going to take it off the bracket. The reason we're doing this is because there is a few bolts that we cannot get to unless we move this. So if you want to take these out, that's fine. Just make sure you label them so they're going into the right way. I found that just tucking it back here is perfectly fine, because once you take out all the bolts, this whole thing will come out. Alright, we're getting a little closer. There's still this electrical piece. This is actually just, you can pop that off again just with your finger. Set that aside. There's one more vacuum hose in the back here that I took a photo of. It's kind of hard to see. I actually remove it once I take this out. It's a lot easier to get to. You can kind of actually pull this up and turn it so you can get to that hose. And then there's two support brackets under here holding this side up, and then there's 7 bolts that go straight down, obviously holding it in place. So I'm going to remove the 2 supports. I'm going to remove the vacuum hose after I lift it up, but then I'm going to take out the 7 bolts and the whole thing should come out. What I did actually is just took one of the support bolts and just put it in just a few turns with my finger, so that way when you start taking all these out, it doesn't kind of droop and fall over. And then when we're ready, we can just pull this bolt out and then pull the whole assembly away. So start taking those all the way out, all the way back, and then the whole assembly should come out. I have everything free. I'm going to pull my support out. Just make sure that it rocks. If you feel any tension at all trying to lift it, go back and look and double check and make sure that you haven't forgotten anything. Have your needle nose pliers ready, and you'll be able to now see the vacuum hose that needs to be removed, and then can you remove it before you lift it all the way out. I have that vacuum hose out, and now just very carefully lift it away and set it aside. I want to take a quick break and mention something since we're at this point. If you need to do your spark plugs, if you're getting even remotely close to needing to do your spark plugs, now is the time. Both banks are fully exposed. You can just pop off the coils, put in your new plugs, bam, your plug job is done. If you need to work on your fuel rails are right here. If you need to do them, for whatever reason, you're getting any codes, any sensors, any injectors, now is the time. You have it all exposed. You already went through the work of getting this far. You might as well get it done while you're here. Also, inspect hoses and connections that you can't normally see. For instance, right here, looks like some maybe PCV line. This is completely split for me. I just now found this. I'll need to repair that before I put it all back together. Don't just jump in here and kind of, be laser focused on your job. Look around and inspect things while everything's exposed. So now that I got that out of the way, what we're going to tackle next is taking off each of the coils. Okay, the coils in here are actually nice and easy. You just want to take these connectors off. You can just push these with your finger. They slide right off. And then, obviously, keep debris clear. And then these are just 10 millimeter bolts. You slide these off and the coil will just come right out. All right, now continue that until all three are out on this side. Okay, now we're just looking to get everything clear of this valve cover. So you have some electrical for your fuel injectors. That's going to be just hooked on with these little zip tie style things. Just get those out of the support. And then there's also this electrical connector that this will slide off of this bar if you just push a little thing on the back here and slide that away and just kind of lift it over this metal piece so it just kind of stays out of the way for you. And then you have this vacuum hose. You want to break this free and pull it out. This just goes from one valve cover to the other. And just pull that aside and just kind of flip it up, somewhere out of the way. All right, now I actually went ahead and took the electrical connector off of what looks like the cam positioning sensor, just so I could get this whole electrical harness out of the way. And then took off the vacuum hose on the other side. And then, of course, I took out these clips and just kind of lifted them over. So now it looks like this is clear. It's ready to be taken off. And the bolts need to be taken off in a specific order, and I'll display those on the screen. But take them off in that order, and also the opposite of that is how we're going to tighten them. So start taking them off, and then once they're all off, we're probably still going to have to kind of, slowly and methodically pry around it because it had a lot of liquid gasket in it. But just get those out and we'll keep moving. Now that all of the bolts are out, it's still going to be firmly held in place. That's because it's going to have a lot of liquid gasket on it. Even if it doesn't, even if it has a regular gasket from a previous job, you still put liquid gasket in certain areas, so it should be held in place. Now what we're going to want to do is just start very, very gently finding a place where there's gaps and kind of prying it up and trying to break that seal. Just be super careful. Look for places that have, that are thicker, so you don't want to break any of these supports. Then you'll be buying yourself a new cover, and you really don't want that. So find a place where you can start wedging something in there and get this rocker cover off. Alright, so I just took a little flathead, just kind of pushed it in and wiggled it, and now you can see it's starting to move. Okay? Just kind of work your way all the way around. See, now the back is actually fully loose. And then work your way all the way around here and start prying it up. Now I'm actually going to remove my cam positioning sensor, mostly because you have it up front kind of covering the valve cover, And then back here you have this metal bracket that's also kind of holding it down. So I can lift it up this far, but obviously you have your wells where your spark plugs go in, and you have to lift them over that to get it out. So I'm just going to take these off. It looks like three 10 millimeter. Then just pull it out, and that way I have more room to pull the cover off. Okay. Flip this over. Let's take a look here. Now that it's free, we just want to make sure we pull this existing gasket out, clean this entire surface where it mates to the motor. Make sure it's very clean. Once it's clean, do the same thing with the mating surface on the cylinder head. And just be very, very careful to not get any of the gasket or any gunk, anything at all, onto your cams. Okay, so I'm going to start with a clean paper towel and just start wiping this whole surface down. Start with on the inside and then kind of push towards the outside to clean everything. So that way if anything falls out, it's just falling to the external of the motor. That once we put everything back together, we can just get some compressed air and blow it in there. So that's fine, but you just do not want it dropping onto your cams. So continue cleaning it like this. Make sure that all these little pieces, like this piece here, make sure that that gets scraped up with a gasket scraper. You want to make sure that's nice and clean, and as you're scraping, just scrape obviously from the inside out to make sure that nothing falls back in. If it does, I mean, we can see a lot of it here, that's okay. We can kind of just pick them out, but you just want to avoid that altogether. Also, in the corners here, where the cylinder head, the cover, and the cam bracket meet, you are going to have to put in some RTV there. So that's going to be the place that we actually put it. The rest is just going to be the actual gasket that's going to cover the rest of it. Okay, same story for this. This is the bottom side of the cover. Just get all of the pieces out as much as you can, especially on the inside and on the mating surface. So the actual surface that touches the cylinder head. Just make sure it's clear of all of this, and then we can put our new gasket in, put the RTV in that one corner or two corners, and then reinstall it. This is the kit that I bought. I got this from Amazon. If you want this particular kit, just go ahead and look in the description of the video. It'll be in there. But it'll just come in sets of two. So you'll just want to install this into the actual cover first, and then get your RTV ready, put it in the proper places, and then you can install the cover. Here's how it looks once it's installed. It's not going to sit flush. The other one might have, mostly because it just kind of compressed over time. But this is going to sit up. You're going to have a little ridge here. And again, just make sure the surface is clean. And then we are going to flip this over and install it once we get our RTV on those joints. Okay, so we have this one joint here, and the other one is literally just the opposite. It's going to be hard to show you on video, but you want to get some RTV in there in that corner, basically where the gasket changes planes, okay? So it's kind of going down, and then it flips like that. That's kind of that corner there. That's where you're going to want to put your RTV. Don't go crazy. You don't need a lot. You also don't want it leaking into the actual cam area. So get it in there. Let's see. And I'll just show you how I did it. And then once that's ready, just give your gasket one good wipe down, just with a clean cloth all the way around it, just to make sure you don't have any last second debris that got on there. And then you want to flip it over and get just one or two of the bolts in there finger tight so it holds it all in place. Also, as you flip it over, make sure that the gasket does not fall out of its track. Alright, so once it's set in place, take a look all the way around it and make sure you can see the gasket and that it is sitting properly before you push it down and put those bolts in. Okay, now that it's in place, I want you to just run your fingers all the way around it and make sure you haven't pinched any wires or anything inadvertently. And also check around your spark plug cylinders and make sure that the little rubber gaskets haven't flipped up or anything like that. You also need to put them all in order, okay? So each bolt needs to go in a certain order, and I'll show you that on the screen. That order you need to do in 2 rounds. Round 1 needs to be down to 17 inch-pounds, and then round 2 is 74 inch-pounds. So let's do that. So that's it. Once you get those down to spec, it's just reassembling it the way it came apart. 2 quick notes about this job. When you are reassembling, make sure you're checking torque specs, and for the throttle body, the order in which the bolts actually go in. Also, read your RTV container. Make sure that you let the car sit for the proper cure time before you run the motor. You don't want that oil splashing up and basically dispersing that RTV throughout the motor. That is the last thing you want. Once you've reassembled and waited the allotted time, get that beast back on the road. I hope you loved this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. Also subscribe for more content like this, and check out my new website, rtcg.tv, where I talk about my jobs in a little more depth, and of course any upcoming jobs that I plan on doing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.